Hi everyone and welcome to this Women at Colt podcast, in conversation with Claire Limbert. My name is Shubha Tobias and I am your host. This is the second and final episode in our series celebrating International Women in Engineering Day. This gives women engineers around the world a profile when they are still underrepresented and plays a vital role in encouraging more women and girls to take up engineering careers. We are carrying on our conversation with one of Colt's most senior women engineers, Claire Limbert. As Colt's Vice President of Network Operations and with over 20 years' experience managing engineering teams, Claire shares her valuable insights with us today. In episode 2, we cover the impact of leadership styles and what Claire has learned from being a manager for the majority of her career, as well as the benefits of mentors and sponsors. We hope you enjoy. Hi Claire, welcome back to episode 2 of the International Women in Engineering Day series. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
So for this episode, we want to talk about leadership and your leadership style. You mentioned on the previous episode that at WH Smith, you ran a team of 12. How old were you when you went to take on that position, and what was the experience of being a manager like?
So I was 22 and I was thrown in completely at the deep end. So I think I'd been working for about 9 months when I first took on my first team responsibility. And my team were all quite a bit younger than me, actually. They were all sort of 16, 17. And my job really was to handle customer escalations for them. And it was so I think in terms of, what I would now consider to be a management role, it was miles apart from, what I would do today. But I was there just to try and support these people to handle difficult customers that they couldn't solve for themselves, and to be there as a backstop if something went wrong. But I went into that with no management experience whatsoever. And I think that's actually probably quite common for, first time managers in some, or certainly it used to be. Since then, obviously, I've given a lot of thought to how do I manage people? How do I support them best? What is it that's going to work for each individual team? What do they need from me? So that I can actually show up in the way that they need me to, while maintaining that level of authenticity that is also really important.
So you've been managing teams for almost all your career. How would you describe your leadership style now?
I spend a lot of time listening to people, understanding their viewpoints, their issues. I think I'm collaborative. I like to encourage people to support themselves. So a lot of what I do is around coaching people, providing advice, providing feedback, helping them to help themselves so that they become self-sufficient, giving them different perspective, different context, so that they can to inform their decision-making process. There are obviously times when you have to make a decision quickly, and in which case that is fine. And there are obviously compliance issues where you just need to, there are certain things that you just have to do. And in those cases, we just make those decisions and move on. But where I can, I like to involve people in the conversations. I like to bring them along the decision-making journeys. I like to spend a lot of time with people. So I think it's very, very important to have regular one-to-ones with my direct reports. I try and reach out to other people of the business whenever I can. I think it's very important to have those strong connections between people and to kind of meet them where they're comfortable. So, and by that I really mean, there are people who want to have, say, a one-to-one once a week. There are people who want to talk to somebody maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. There are some people who prefer to have joint meetings. So where I have, where I directly manage people, I try to be flexible in terms of both what I need from them and what they need from me. With broader teams, I think it's really important to show up, to have a clear message, to be able to share and to be as transparent as I possibly can. So we spend a lot of time talking to We don't just do all hands calls. We spend a lot of time talking to our people leaders to make sure that they have the tools that they need in order to do their jobs effectively. But I have very much an open door policy. I want people to feel that they can come to me if they need something. And, if we can resolve things together, then I feel that that's an efficient way of working.
Do you think your leadership style has changed throughout your career? And what has helped you evolve as a leader?
So I think massively, because I started off leading technical teams. And as a technical manager, my remit was primarily around helping people do the job effectively and helping with technical decisions and being like the sort of senior engineer, if you like, guiding the team outputs. And I think over time, I've really focused in on my people skills, my communication skills, my decision-making skills, my delegation skills, because the reality is that in a team the size of the one that I work in today, the experts isn't never going to be me. It's the people sitting within the team. It's how to, my job now is about how to remove the roadblocks to help them to be successful, and understanding what the bigger picture is and making sure that we're making the right decisions for the team and for the customers. So it's much less about the day-to-day technical aspects, although obviously there's a strategy, there's a fact, always a factor of that, but it's more about how do you build the right culture? How do you encourage people to thrive? How do you attract and retain the right talent? How do you ensure people have the tools and the information they need to do their jobs effectively?
In the last podcast, we spoke briefly about the importance of mentors and sponsors on your career. So let's delve into that a little bit more. Speaking about mentors first, who have been some of the key mentors throughout your career, and how have you gone about identifying them and building that relationship?
Okay, so I've had different mentors at different times. I've had mentors because I needed to learn a specific topic and I wanted to get their advice on that, and to find, to have somebody that I could speak to who was outside of my day-to-day job, who I could just bounce ideas off and who I could think about, sort of help to think differently about stuff. I think the biggest impact I had was a mentor that I had who I was probably in touch with for about 5 or 6 years. He was more senior than me in the business that I was in, and he worked in a different area of the business. So he was very much customer facing on the sales side of the organization. I was working in operations and engineering, and he was somebody that I had previously worked with, and I approached him and said, look, would you be willing to become my mentor? Because I felt that I didn't have a strong enough, sitting in engineering, I didn't have a strong enough view of the customer experience. And I really wanted to get some first-hand perspective from somebody who was managing customers day in, day out, who was dealing with, perhaps difficult questions from time to time, who was thinking about customer strategy, who was thinking about how the customer interacted with the company that I was working in at the time. And he was great because he was very open. He was very honest. He actually enabled me to go visit some of his customers with him. So I actually saw him in action and saw how he handled particular situations. But he was also a good person to call up and just say, hey, this has happened. How would you deal with that? This is what I was thinking, but, is there a better way to deal with that? And, although we obviously don't talk about work anymore, I'm still in touch with him now socially because, he's still keen to see what's happening. He's retired now, but he's still keen to see what's happening in my career. So he was quite a key influence for quite some time. And the benefit of him was, he'd got different experience and different background, but he was keen to share. And he brought a lot of wisdom to the relationship. And, I learned a tremendous amount from him through the time that I worked with him.
That's interesting. And now on to sponsors. Firstly, could you explain what is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor?
So a mentor is somebody that you choose. You ask somebody if they'll be your mentor. you're the person who guides the conversation. So, I have mentored people, and I've obviously been and I've also been a mentee. As a mentee, I'm the person who comes and says, look, can we spend some time? I'd really like to talk to you about this and get your opinion. And we did it at the intervals that suited me. And we talked about the things that I felt I needed to help me progress. And obviously, based on the feedback and the conversations, then we might have follow-ups, but it was really me driving that relationship. A sponsor is somebody who's more senior than you in the business. And, it needs to be at least your manager's manager level. It's somebody who gets to know you and chooses to advocate for you, because based on what they know about you and based on what they know you can do, because career decisions about you are never made when you're in the room. They're always made in conversations with people who, when you're are more senior than you quite often, but you're not present. You need somebody who will speak for you. Now, you can't force anybody to do that. They have to choose to. But those sponsors can be really, really powerful, because they can see potential opportunities for you that you might not even be aware of. They can give you opportunity, whether it's a career or whether it's a development opportunity. They can give you exposure to parts of the business that you might not otherwise be able to do. And they can also help you form networking connections that broaden your own network and then create more opportunities in that way as well.
Thank you for explaining that. What would you say has been the impact of a sponsor on your career?
So I think it's been quite significant. I mean, I have obviously had to put the work in to back that up as well. But having people who can build connections for me certainly opened me up to more job opportunities that than I would have been able to get easily beforehand. So, my role as a director, I think, when I first became a director, I think I was, I interviewed for the jobs. I was the best candidate. I got the roles, but all the people who were interviewed had sponsors. And I think they might not have even made it through it helped to make it through that first selection process. And then once you've done that, you have to prove that you can do it on your own. But I think it opens doors in that way. I think also, just on a personal level, I'm probably not as good as selling myself on paper as perhaps I could be. I think, I freely admit my LinkedIn probably needs some work. My CV probably needs some work. So having somebody who said that it's worth talking to her to see what she has to say, then helps me to get in through the door to have the interview in the first place. So I think that's one of the main areas, but also having somebody who just speaks positively about you when you're not in the room, builds up your reputation. And I think that helps as well, because it sort of confers a certain amount of trust in what you're doing and the sort of person that you are and your capabilities.
So what's your advice for finding a sponsor or building a relationship with someone who could be your sponsor?
It's a difficult one, because a sponsor is somebody, they have to choose to sponsor you. It's not something you can't ask somebody to be your sponsor. What you can do is show up positively and proactively and show your best self, and take the opportunities that you can to sort of show what you can do, and be consistent in the way that you do it. And then hopefully people will recognize that. And if you find somebody who recognizes that, and it doesn't need to be somebody in your management chain or your own organization, but it's somebody who's actually a decision maker, who is likely to be able to positively influence conversations around you or suggest you in a context that perhaps somebody else hadn't thought of, then that's that's the best outcome. But it's something that you have to do it. You gain sponsors by demonstrating what you can do, and really by by showing that you've got ability to grow. It's not something that you can really ask people for.
Who is someone that inspires you, Claire?
I've had many over time. I think one of my favorites that I keep coming back to is Dame Stephanie Shirley. She's, and I've talked about her a few times before. I mean, she's a lady who in the 1960s decided she was going to set up an IT company. And she, at that time, it was before the Equal Opportunities Act, and she employed only women, and they all worked at their kitchen tables. So she pioneered women working in technology. She pioneered flexible working. She pioneered working from home. She positively targeted ladies who could work during the day while their children were at school, and they coded applications which eventually became things like the code for the black boxes in aeroplanes, and a number of other business critical applications. And I think the thing that impressed me about her is that she just didn't allow any of the perceived barriers to overcome what she wanted to do. She wanted to hire women, so she did. She wanted to create a technical company, so she did. She did a maths degree, even though she was told she couldn't because she was a woman. She managed to set up her own company, even though I think her husband had to countersign the company accounts because she wasn't allowed to hold the company in her own name at the time. And she just had such a clear vision of where she wanted to get to, and she found ways around the challenges that she faced day to day. And the outcome of that was that I think she changed the dynamic really about the industry. And she found over time, she actually had to call herself Steve because she wasn't taken seriously as a woman in that industry to start off with. And she said for years that her company was treated as a pet project, even when it started earning millions. And people seemed to be taken by surprise that she'd been so successful. But I think, if somebody sort of 40 or 60 years ago now actually can achieve all of that and can find solutions to problems, then actually none of us have any excuse for figuring out, what's stopping us from progressing. How can we make a difference? And most importantly, how can we support each other? Because nobody gets to where they are in a career on their own. They need support from the people around them. So it's a responsibility we have, not just to look at our own careers, but also how can we help the people coming through behind us as well, and make sure that they have the career paths they need to take them into the future.
Yes, she's a big inspiration to me too, and I'm sure a lot of women within technical roles. As we are celebrating International Women in Engineering Day, Claire, what do you see as the opportunities for women in the engineering field?
I think the opportunities are huge, and I think the industry is at a really exciting point. Everything is changing so fast. So, we've seen unprecedented demand for networks. We're now seeing we've seen a migration towards cloud services and content. We're starting to see the beginnings of what generative AI can do for us, and I think that changes the dynamic. So, I would say it's a great opportunity for anybody, male or female, to get involved. I think we'll need different skills over periods of time. We'll certainly need technical skills, but I think those will change as the technology itself changes. And I think we need to understand the importance of the interpersonal qualities that differentiate what we can do as individuals as opposed to what we can automate, and where we can use toolings, and the value that we bring as people is unique. So I would encourage anybody to get involved in engineering because it's a really broad field. I think there are huge opportunities for people, but I think part of that is bringing the responsibility of those people we bring in. It's important that we give them the coaching, the training, the mentoring that they need so that they can be successful, not just to bring them into a company, but also throughout their career to help them develop in the directions that they want to. So, yeah, I think the future's bright.
Thank you, Claire, for joining us today to round off this podcast series celebrating International Women in Engineering Day. I've had a great time speaking with you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you to you, the listeners, for joining us today. This has been a one-off series from Women at Colt.